From Rockstar to leadership rock solid. Today on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous, my guest is Brant Menswar, a man who traded tour buses for boardrooms and is still turning up the volume. We're talking about momentum, we're digging into values, and we're unpacking hope. If you're stuck, stalled, or sprinting towards something big, this episode is your wake-up call. Let's get on with the show.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. No.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Me, Tom Arnold, I am very famous. I absolutely because it's very true. Like, I hadn't freaking heard of you until I was sitting on a Friday night. This is how bad my life is. Listen, fucker, good luck. Good luck with your rebranding. Like anybody knew what the name was before. What was the name? Okay, who gives a shit? That's a good name because it's got your name in it. You can pretend you're humble. You say, I'm not famous. And, which you aren't. So you're just, anyway, but I hope you get famous doing this. Good luck to you.
Woody-hoo! Woody-hoo! Out here in the stream, as in the streaming era, I fight for my dreams. I get my heart into my living.
You encourage drinking or marijuana use on the show?
I don't need a fight, cause Evelyn's right. Or you could sponsor an emu. I'm Batman.
That's your tweetable moment, folks. That's your tweetable moment. If Mark Zuckerberg makes a metaverse, is that Web3? No, it's Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse.
He's like us. He's flawed.
Just a little segue.
That's some dope shit, dude. That's really, really nice.
Woody-hoo! 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 It's been a while since I've shown that little intro, and I was smiling. Brant is in the green room. He's smiling as well, or maybe he's just got that, what have I signed up for? He's clearly gone off the deep end since the last time he was on the show. This man is no black sheep, let me tell you. Brant is an absolute, he's a literal, he's a figurative rock star. He is back once again in the studio, and we're talking about momentum. Mo money, mo problems. But let's rather not worry about mo problems. Let's go with momentum. Mo hope. Momentum, mo squaredment. You know what? Forget it. There's too many dad jokes, and we haven't even hit minute 4 as well. I am excited to welcome him on the show. But before we do that, as I always do, I share my why statement. As a teacher, facilitator, and a coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever change. This has been my journey as what I call, there's BP and AP after pandemic. We began with the show. I started the show when people were stuck at home, quite literally, or stuck in general. And of course, when you're stuck, the best thing to do is to get unstuck. Growth through business coaching and leadership coaching now with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. You know, the idea of growing, sometimes it's not always about growth in terms of EBITDA and top line and bottom line. Sometimes it's just about growing up. It's about growth in terms of priorities, prioritization. What's really important in life? What matters? I tell you what matters. Relationships matter. And finally, to what end? Forever changed. I wrote this book during COVID, how a global pandemic changed my direction, my purpose, and my life. And the central message here is you do not need death, divorce, being laid off, a global pandemic to change, to become forever changed. I came up with a formula, which is amor, love what you do, veritas, be true to yourself, and vigor, stay the course. That's the resilience. It is the grit. It is the long game. It is the stamina. It is energy. I'm also playing around right now by doing some live reads on a Friday afternoon by invitation only, reading a book called The Courage to Be Disliked, a really, really interesting book that actually says, you know, when you are your authentic self, not everyone's going to love you for it, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. But now it's time for the seated soliloquy, my monologue where I'm sitting, hence it is seated, and hence it is a soliloquy. And today is called, it's called Womentum. So see what I just did there, Brant? You know, I was looking at the word momentum, and I saw the word men in there, and I was like, okay, wait a second. Is it momentum or is it momentum? Momentum? Men? Wait a second. I think we can do better. It's not just mo men, mo problems. What about women? What about thinking about women in it? Now, this has nothing to do with men versus women. It was just playing around with the word, looking at the word mo as in more, looking at the word men. I have no idea about tum. I suppose when I get heartburn, I go to tums. But just playing around with this idea that I don't think we've done enough thinking about the power of momentum. I mean, immediately in my mind, I think of Sisyphus rolling the rock uphill. Is that momentum? The more you roll the rock uphill, it never seems to end. That's purgatory in a way. What really is momentum? Is momentum a flywheel? We hear about that with Jim Collins, a concept of a flywheel. You better not touch it once it's really picked up, otherwise it may actually injure you as well. I'm not really sure, and I don't need to actually be able to answer this because Brant's going to be in the studio in just a few moments, and he's going to tell us how he defines it and how it lives and it breathes and why it's so important and why you should care. I will tell you one thing, though, that sometimes I was thinking, like, how do you create it? How do you start it when you are stuck, right? Going back to the idea of being stuck, you know, there are two parts, I guess. One is when you're not moving, and there is inertia, and, you know, there's what's it called? 60 miles, 62, you know, the idea of 62 miles to outer space, and you require the most energy, the most effort to actually get that first mile, you know, from being static, from being still to moving, and then every single mile thereafter you require and exert less energy. That is one form of momentum. But there's also another kind, I suppose, which is you can be moving but actually not progressing, right? You can just be running in a circle. You can be frantic or frenetic or ultimately just moving for the sake of moving but not actually getting anywhere. Is that momentum, just moving? I don't think so. So to me, if I put it all together, there are two parts to momentum, and I'm going to let the expert come in and tell us whether I'm on track or not. The first is to get moving, and the second is not just to keep moving. Well, I suppose it is. Get moving, keep moving, but then make sure that you are moving in a direction, the journey and the destination together. But those are just my random thoughts on a Friday. I want to hear what the man of the moment, the man of the moment. I told you the dad jokes are just going to keep coming. It is Brant Menswar, from former rock star to visionary thought leader. Brant ignites unstoppable momentum in organizations and individual trailblazers facing uncertainty. He seamlessly fuses proprietary research, personal growth principles, and cutting-edge leadership strategies to forge unbreakable, high-performing cultures while inspiring companies to crush their big goals. a best-selling author and Cornell certified expert in the psychology of leadership. Brant has earned his place among the top motivational speakers in the country. Brant, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, brother. And so glad to be back. So fun to sit and watch in the green room as you bring smiles to people's faces. And that's part of why
I was bringing a smile to my own face. I was like, I clearly don't know what the hell is going to come out of my mouth. But I just had so much fun with the whole intro and thinking of like, you know, you're a motivational speaker. There's the word mo in momentum, you know, mo money, mo problems. I was just having a lot of fun just playing with words, etc. But before we get into that, I just whacked the whole, you know, the whole rig here, as we say. In your bio, the site, talk to me about psychology of leadership. I just want to hear a little bit about that, because leadership is just, I mean, I'm in it, you're in it as well. People just don't really understand. Tell me a little bit about the psychology of leadership.
So as you know, in the keynote speaking world, we are always looking for ways to differentiate. And being a guy coming out of the music business, who would take the stage with his guitar, I had found, this is just the honest truth, I had found a ceiling as to how much people would pay for a guy with a guitar that's name wasn't Bono. And I decided I needed to figure out if do I need a little more credibility? And so I decided I was going to go back to school. So I went back to school. I went to Cornell and got certified. They have an entire certification course on the psychology of leadership, which was a 3-month course on trying to figure out the specifics of what leadership is, how it works, what's the, you know, what is the psychology behind what makes a good leader. And I did it and I got certified, all thinking that it was going to crush some of the risk mitigation of bringing me in to speak as a guy with a guitar. And what I discovered is that that was total bullshit, and nobody needed to have any letters after their name or certified in anything. I just needed to provide a better experience. And so that's, it's nice to have it. I'm glad that I have the knowledge, but I'm still the guy with the guitar at the end of the day.
So why can't there be both? Why couldn't you be the guy with the guitar, the letters after his name, and you know, and someone that actually can go a little bit deeper? I'll talk to you about something with leadership. I'm playing around with this idea of because I play around with one of the EOS core values is humbly confident, so humility and confidence. Yep. But the thing that I've been playing around with, and I don't know what I want to do with it or where I want it to go, is the word insecurity. Because I think there's talking about psychology, right? So many people are so goddamn insecure. Now, obviously, the opposite of insecure is to be secure. But so many people are just not. They're just not secure. And it manifests in business, in life, on stage, in a social setting. What are your thoughts about the idea of people living and ghosting through their lives and the concept of insecurity? What does it conjure up for you?
For me, it is a byproduct of not knowing what your non-negotiable values are. So in our, you know, when I wrote Black Sheep back in 2020, and since then we've collected over 500,000 data points through our assessment on personal values, based on a variety of things, age range, gender, industry, you name it. And you know, what we've discovered is less than 1% of the people know specifically what their 5 non-negotiable values are. Everybody has an idea of what is really important to them, but we treat things that are really important and things that are non-negotiable like they are kissing cousins, and they in fact are miles apart from each other, and we never do the work to separate them. And so when we don't know what our non-negotiable values are, how can you not be insecure? I mean, you don't know what that foundation that you want to stay on. What are those things that are immovable? What no means no? And when you realize what those are, it is much easier to be secure in who you are and what you care about.
I love that. I mean, I didn't even think we would go down that path, but you've attached and you've connected the concept of being insecure. You know, like people talk about imposter syndrome and whatever, but insecurity is actually connected to identity, right? That authentic self. It's not really about confidence. There's the Venn diagram, which is why I've been playing with humility, confidence, and security. But it really comes down to knowing who you are. I mean, ironically, here I'm talking about the courage to be disliked, which is the courage is there when you are living your true self. You are not compromising on your non-negotiable values. So I love that.
And to be honest, the top 3 shared values, this is some of our research, the top 3 shared values among all people. Number 1 is connection. And number 1 by a 50% margin to the next closest shared value. So that's how important connection is for us as humans. So I will tell you, especially if we look at the younger generations, connection is a massive issue. And because there isn't the type of strong connection that, as a Gen Xer, we still had to pick up a phone and call somebody if we wanted to get together with them. It wasn't, we didn't have texting and all the technology that exists today that really hinders traditional connection, not digital connection, but traditional connection where we're in person, enjoying somebody else's company. So for the number 1 shared value, we struggle with that. So that's going to cause some insecurity because we don't feel connected to a community or a group that will support us. So there's number 1. Number 2 is integrity. If you don't know what your non-negotiable values are, how can you be or have integrity around things that you don't know are facts? And then third is authenticity. So again, here it comes down to how can you be your authentic self when you don't know what your authentic self is made of? And so those 3, the final 2 are growth and creativity. And so the interesting part when we look at these values, these most commonly shared values, it's no doubt that we have so many people that suffer from imposter syndrome and this idea of insecurity.
I was you just made me think of something else while I was as I'm studying happiness, as you know that I'm studying happiness right now, and we have happy hours every week. Unfortunately, there is no alcohol involved. Actually, there better not be because they're at 8 a.m. on a Thursday. So, that would be rough. That would be rough. But we played in the latest happy hour. There was the concept, and I'm just kind of writing down the notes. I think Warren Bennis. So many people talk about the idea of know thyself, right? So know thyself, and then what our lecturer, what Tal Ben Shahar added was be yourself. Mm-hmm. Know thyself and be yourself. And I love that distinction. I love that kind of 1-2 punch in terms of, just action reaction.
And honestly, it's the first step of momentum is you have to know what your non-negotiables are, because these are the things that you're going to be filtering your decisions through. And if you don't know what they are, then you're winging it. And do you know the origin of the phrase winging it?
I want to hear it.
It's very interesting. So it comes from the theater community. And, around the turn of the century, 1900s in the States, when the gold rush was happening, people at that time, believe it or not, had more money and time than they knew what to do with. And so in response to that, they started to build all these playhouses. And they built so many playhouses that they had more playhouses than they had actors. And so what would end up happening is a show would start, an actor would inevitably get sick or hurt or something happen, and someone would have to fill in at the last second as an emergency. And so they would get to the theater, they would stand just off stage in the wings of the church, of the theater, and they would frantically try to memorize the lines that they had to say just before they stepped on stage. That practice became known as winging it. And so we've taken a practice designed for an emergency, and so many of us have adopted it as a way of life that this is how we treat living every day. Rather than knowing our lines, knowing our values, knowing what they need to be, we choose to try to wing it in a moment and try to find the thing that we need in that moment to perform to the best of our capabilities. And that's just ludicrous to me.
So if I wanted to build upon that, what you're actually saying, I mean, what you are saying is, and I already know the distinction, right? Which is the age of improv, the ability to be spontaneous, the ability to be agile. The two things are not at odds, because there are going to be times when you're going to be forced to wing it, when you're going to be forced to be able to improvise and be agile. But that is not a way to live your life. And that, I think, is the point that you're making, which is people that are living life. I mean, think about the wasted energy and momentum that is wasted from spinning wheels, and having to almost, just get up to speed unnecessarily, when you actually can have something that works, rinse and repeats the flywheel.
Yeah.
So back to you, I to build on that thought.
Yeah. So for me, as a performer for decades now of, touring the world with two different bands, two different record deals, the reason that you write the songs, you learn the songs, you own those songs, you can play them without looking at the instrument, you can sing them without thinking of the lyrics. The reason that you do that is, and we have a phrase that we would use when we would perform, is we want to capture the truth in the room. That's the goal. Can you capture the truth in the room? If you can do that, you can get lightning in a bottle. And that's the moment that everyone is going to talk about when the concert is over. As I transitioned from being a musician to a speaker, I've taken that same philosophy, because my big thing that I noticed coming into the speaking world is to me, there's a massive distinction between a presenter and a speaker. A presenter presents information. But if the power goes out, if the slides go down, so do they, right? And I would venture to guess the majority of people in that world are presenters. Now, they are great presenters, and they can present information incredibly well and in a compelling way. But speakers leave enough space to capture the truth in the room. They allow it to present itself, and then they're able to capture that and use that, so that every time you do this, it doesn't feel like it's the same thing. It takes a little bit different twist every single time you take stage. And that, to me, is the beauty of owning your moments, right? Of owning your values, because what that allows you to do, if I know my values, it frees me up to be able to capture the truth in the room. Because even though I'm forced to wing it, I'm winging it with guidelines. And I've built these guidelines for myself, and there's freedom in that structure. Because the challenge is, when we don't know where the edge is, we never approach it. So when you define where the edge is, which are those values, I can dip my toe over that edge because I know I can bring it back. But if I don't know where the edge is, I always stay 10 feet back, and nothing special happens 10 feet back. Everything that is great in life happens on the edge. And that's where we should be living. And the only way to live there with the security and the confidence that you need is by defining these non-negotiable values, so that you enable yourself to wing it when necessary.
I give you a giant air horn, an ogress air horn. We're going to get to that in a moment. I absolutely love that. What a great soundbite. This idea of nothing. What did you say? Nothing happens, or nothing special happens 3 feet from the edge, or whatever you said.
Yeah.
We'll go back and just hold on. My producer says we've caught that on. Oh, I have no producer. I'm just touching my ear. But it's so true. You got to know where the edge is, right? And then the artist will get so close to it. But Brant, there were so many things in my mind as you were talking about this that just were like flooded my mind. For example, when you see the fifth wall being broken, or when you see what appears someone has lost their place or forgotten their lines, and they start winging it. And the reality is they're not winging it at all. They're so polished and so prepared. They might even have done it on purpose. But even if they did forget their lines, they've got a plan B in place to get back up to speed. And it is the preparation. It is the preparation. It is the hard work. It's the fact that they know where the line is. It's so powerful. I hope people watching are just taking copious notes, because this is the essence. This is the essence of where preparation meets opportunity, which, by the way, as we know, is also the definition of luck.
It's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I want to talk about momentum. I want to know what your definition is of momentum. I played around with a couple of ideas, winging it. Now, I wing my soliloquy by not preparing, by not taking notes. You can tell the way maybe I stutter and stammer, and you can almost see the two brain cells or cogs in my mind whirring together. But there is preparation too, which is I know enough about enough to be dangerous. I've had 800 episodes on the show. So I choose to also, I know where my line is, but then I can pull away and hand it over to you. So first of all, how did I do in terms of my thoughts, my ruminations on momentum? And then tell me what your definition is.
I love it. So I will tell you this. Even in your soliloquy in the beginning, was very much how this book was created. Is that I noticed that in the word momentum was the word moment, and that is the sort of North Star of this new approach to creating momentum. For me, momentum is this sense of forward movement and accomplishment that propels us towards our goals, right? And I think there's been a traditional approach to achieving these goals and creating momentum, which is this very laborious, detailed, multi-year plan with multi-gates to get through. And you keep your check-ins every 3 months or so. And how are you doing? And it's not that I don't think we need a plan. I think we need a plan, and I think you should have long-term goals. But my change that I'm asking for in this book is how we approach that plan. We need to approach the plan moment by moment. There is so much uncertainty in the world today that by the time you come up with your incredibly detailed plan, it's already been rendered moot, right? Because uncertainty has just changed it. And uncertainty and change are the travel buddies you never asked for. They come together, and that's part of the challenge. Is it takes those plans and it turns them upside down, and it leaves us to fend for ourselves. And a lot of us will just throw our hands up in the air, or we postpone doing things because our plans are now not as we thought they were going to be. What I want people to do is use what I call momentum in this book. I want you to focus on the single moment in front of you. And can you take that moment and tap into its power and be able to catapult yourself forward over your challenges towards your goal by using that single moment that you're in, and do it for every moment you're in. And that is this shift that the book presents.
I want to double tap on that for a second, but first, when we talk about the sublime to the ridiculous, I looked at Mo, I looked at men, I looked at women, you looked at moment. At the moment, I'm thinking I'm sure there's an in there. So maybe is important too. The ability to pause.
That was in the original logo. Was the was in brackets, and it was to basically say, if you took the time that it takes to say and instead focused on the moment, how much change could you create in that single moment?
He puts the in momentum. But let me play it back based on what I heard.
Yeah.
And the context behind this is, I just part of a cohort that I'm doing on what's called positive intelligence, activating the sage brain and activating one element of the sage brain, which is all focused on navigating, which is number one, what is the next step, and breaking down a task into small pieces, and then hyper focusing or fixating on the next step. Very similar in a way, very, very, I would say, reinforcing thought, which is instead of getting overawed or overwhelmed or paralyzed with fear, understand what the next task is and then focus on that. And then there's another part of that, which I also heard, in not so many words, is the idea of being present. And so there's presence, being present, and letting that dictate ultimately whether you continue down the same path or maybe take another path. It's very, very powerful.
It's you literally just described the framework that the book presents, right? So there's three main concepts that the book focuses on. The first is a mindset shift that we can talk about, but the second is, how do you create momentum itself, right? What is in that moment that's going to allow you to create momentum? We start by focusing and being present because it's the only place we can affect change, right? And the book, the first chapter of the book, talks about the mental time travel that we end up doing to ourselves because we are constantly living in the past or projecting to the future when we should be in the present where we can actually affect change. And so the idea of this 4-step framework, it's called the bump framework. How do we create momentum? We bump a moment forward. And BUMP stands for belonging, understanding, meaning, and purpose. And so the actual framework for creating momentum is exactly what you just described, which is first discovering who belongs in this moment with you. Is everybody that needs to be in the moment, are they in the moment with you? That's number one. Number two, what's the clarity of understanding? What are we trying to accomplish in this moment? Not overall, in this moment. The third is meaning. Why are we doing this? What is the larger purpose that we have, that larger meaning? And then purpose itself, as the P in bump, is what are the next steps that have to happen in order to bring this purpose to fruition, to achieve this goal? So that bump framework is who belongs in the meeting? What is the understanding, the clarity of understanding of what we're trying to accomplish? Why are we doing it? And then what are the next steps so that everybody knows exactly what's going to happen next when you exit that meeting? And that is that bump framework of how you actually create the momentum to move forward.
I hear one thing, which is that comes across very, very strongly when when you're able to break things down into smaller pieces. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. The fact that we're just, again, so overwhelmed right now with all the noise, with all the distraction, with the being judged. There's so much noise out there, and I think the hyperfixation on bumping. The word that you used is this idea of, what did you call it? Kind of bumping the moment.
Yes.
How did you?
You bump the moment forward, and that's how you create momentum.
So that's the goal. The goal is just to kind of move one step forward, left foot in front of the. I wrote in Forever Changed this concept I call plodding with purpose. Just plodding, one foot in front of the other, left, just through the muck, through the mire, through the swamp. Just keep moving, don't stop. And then of course the purpose, which is I'm not just walking for the sake of walking. I'm walking, I'm moving forward, I'm progressing. Let's talk about what happens when you falter, when you fail, when you slip back. Because one of the things that I know that and we'll keep going back to it, is this concept of hope. I even think about how I'll be on my Peloton and I'll be making so much progress and what I would say gaining momentum, and then I get sick I'm out of commission for 2 weeks, and I come back and I feel like I've slipped so far behind, and struggling to just get back on the horse or on the peloton, struggling to just be able to get back to where I was. Lost time, lost momentum.
Yeah.
Why is that so hard for us, Brent? Why is it so hard for us to just be able to get back on and get back up to speed again?
In my opinion, it's that hard because we are holding ourselves accountable to an end goal that is pretty far out for most of us. And the reason that it's so hard is that it feels the weight of that accomplishment feels so heavy that it stops us from wanting to get back on the bike. When we convert how we live to moment by moment, it's only a moment. And when you falter, it's just for a moment. And guess what? You know you're going to have another moment that happens today. So when you start looking at end goal things, end of, the accomplishment at the end of the rainbow, and when we pull back from that and we say, what can I accomplish in this moment? What we find is that we minimize the overwhelmingness of a larger goal, and we're able to just confront the moment. And that's, to be honest with you, this is why the book came out anyways. For those that have followed my story, know my oldest son, Theo, battled cancer and for 9 years. And when COVID hit, he just couldn't fight it. So I lost him in February of 2021, and I fell off a cliff, for a good 18 months and just spiraled down, made some really bad decisions in my life. And I had already written the book on values, so I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't have the effort in me to want to do it. I had lost my reason. And so after about 18 months, I sort of removed myself from society, and I, a lot of people in my inner circle were really nervous about me at that time. And one of my buddies called me up one day and he said, look, I need to have a conversation with you. And he said, I know you've been through something horrible. We've all went through it with you. I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, but I want you to know something. He said, I want you to know what I believe. And I believe when we die, we really die twice. The first is when we leave this earth, but the second is when our name is spoken for the last time. So what I want to know from you is, what are you doing to make sure Theo's second life outlives his first? Because the wallowing is not going to get it done. And it was that hard, tough love check against the boards that woke me up and made me understand that I needed second life effort to pull out of this. And it was overwhelming to me to think about what that would look like. So the only thing I could muster was enough courage to just face the moment I was in, and nothing more. I just didn't have it in me. And so when I started to face that moment that I was in, I started to understand the power that that single moment had to be able to move me forward. And what I discovered is that everyday moments would move me one step closer. But there were these other moments that would present themselves, sometimes every day, sometimes every few days. And those moments possess this emotional component that provided an enormous amount of potential to catapult me closer to where I wanted to be, instead of just that tiny little step forward. And so I started to live my life working moment to moment, to own that moment, to do everything I could in that moment. And I kept my eyes out for these special moments that when they presented themselves, I recognized them for what they were. And I used them to catapult myself much farther than an everyday moment would present. And that's how I was able to pull out and create the momentum that I now am experiencing coming on 4 years later, it started by realizing that I only had the power within me to just deal with that moment in front of me, that survival mode instinct. That's all I had to start with, but that was enough. That's the silver lining of survival mode, is that it forces you to live in the present moment and only that moment.
I mean, I feel like I need to let those beautiful words breathe a little bit. Part of my my pea brain was just saying, we will not associate Theo's name with Second Life. I couldn't help but take us back to Second Life, but Third Life and Fourth Life and Fifth Life. And wow, I mean, what beautiful words! This idea that he lives on,
Mm.
his memory lives on, you
Mhm.
live on. There is this beautiful, and this is almost like an homage to him, this book.
Yeah,
I
it
jotted
really is.
down I jotted down the phrase, it all adds up. And that really is, these small moments, they all add up. And they may not seem significant at the time, but over time they create something big and beautiful and huge and even ogress, wouldn't you say?
I would say these are the moments that I discovered sort of enter our lives like the Kool-Aid man. They sort of break through the wall unexpectedly and create this overwhelming gut reaction of emotion, that OGRE. Those ogre moments um, possess so much power because of this emotional content that is included, that those are the moments that move us forward at a rapid pace. And if you think about any viral video you've ever watched in your life, they're all ogre moments. It's not just the content, it's the content plus the emotion, right? And that emotion is so strong, whether it's joy, fear, happiness, anxiety, whatever it is, it's so prevalent that it's the emotion that makes people want to share the video after they've watched it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And so when we recognize what they look like, we understand that when they present themselves, if we can redirect those moments by creating this sense of belonging, understanding, meaning, and purpose, then we can use those moments to drive ourselves towards our goals. And what we find is that the same amount of effort that it takes in that everyday moment applied to an ogre moment has like 10x results, because that emotional component is what allows it to carry so much further and reverberate so much more with whomever it is we're in the moment with. And that's the thing that I look for most these days is, can I capture or create ogre moments for myself and other people to help move them forward? Because I believe at the end, for all of us, legacy for me is in what we leave behind. Legacy is about how many people we help move forward. And I've learned that the hard way, but it's my sole focus now. The book talks about there's 3 stages of momentum: living, lifting, and legacy. Living is survival mode. You're living moment to moment, not because you want to, but because there's no other options, right? You do that as long as you can until you decide you want something more out of life. And you're not going to settle for this anymore. So you stop making excuses, you start taking accountability, and you start to lift yourself out. And that's that second stage. That second stage is about, can I start to make sure that I am paying attention to the moments that exist in front of me? Can I use bump to move myself forward in all the moments that I face? And then finally, this legacy stage is about helping others move forward. Can you own a moment for someone else? In the living stage, the moment owns you, right? You're just trying to survive. The moment owns you. In lifting, you decide to own the moment. And in legacy, you decide to own the moment for somebody else. you're going to help them move forward, right? That's the 3 stages. They're not linear. And over the course of our lives, we will find ourselves moving in and out of these stages all the time because uncertainty happens, life happens. You've got an incredible win, an incredible loss, whatever that is. It throws us into these different stages at different times. But the idea is when we know what matters most to us, we're able to act with deliberate intention. When we act with deliberate intention, we can own the moment. And when we own the moment, we can stay committed by managing our hope. And that's the entire process that the book sort of lays out in front of you.
I love it. The technology did something, but you're back. I didn't know if it was on my end or yours, but it was okay. Sometimes you just got to. That was a moment, right? That's what they say, right? We just had a moment. There is the framework like only you can do, Brant. It's like a beautifully crafted song, verse 1, chorus, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge. There is structure, there is cadence, there is rhythm, there is beautiful momentum, there is a story being told, and probably at this stage, I'll come and share the quote that I always find for my guests. This was the quote that I found for you. One way to keep momentum going is to have constantly greater goals. This is Michael Corder. And in a way, I see this beginning, middle, end. I see this past, present, and future. But what I really see is this idea of how do you keep going? And clearly the moments all add up, right? The moments, the small moments, the being in the present add up. And then there is a goal, right? And having greater goals and having that ambition. And I think in many respects, you've defined that greater goal, the greatest goal, as in legacy. Not what you leave behind, but how many people you helped move forward, which of course, again, goes back to this idea of plodding with purpose. It's beautiful. It's dynamic. It's dynamic and purposeful. We keep moving. We never stop, but we know where we're heading at the end of the day.
I agree. And I think that leads us to, we have to talk about hope, right? Because this is, it's funny when I talk about hope to corporate clients, they look at me like I've got 4 heads, right? And what's the KPI of hope, and how can I track and manage hope? And, the truth is that in the last few years, it has been studied and proven by some of the biggest consultancies on the planet that hope is actually a KPI that can be managed and looked after. And that, to me, it's actually, so my next book, sort of the third in the trilogy of values, momentum, and hope. The next book is called The Alchemy of Hope, which hopefully will be out next year. But it breaks hope into 3 specific areas, right? And this is what I discovered when I was stuck, is that hope, we make it out to be this existential thing, this spiritual thing. And in reality, to me, hope is just a combination of 3 things. It's desires, expectations, and action. And that's all that hope is. And if we can have those 3 things, we can manage the amount of hope that we have. Desire gives hope direction. And so it's why we need clarity around what it is that we desire, because this is the direction we're trying to tell hope to follow us, right? So it's got to know where we're going. Expectations is how we expand what we believe is possible. And so that expectation helps us to maybe create a larger goal, as we just talked about. Maybe it's that greater goal that we're not thinking is possible quite yet. And then if you have desire and expectation without action, well, that's paralysis, right? So we need to have the action in there, because the action is what creates that initial momentum. So the action is where the bump comes in. That's how we take that single moment, bump it forward, and make sure that we have those next steps at the end, because that's the guaranteed movement that is needed to ensure yourself that momentum will be there, whether it's a little roll forward, a one step forward, but it's definitely there. And when we focus on that in the moment, every day, day in and day out, when a week passes and you look back, you have no idea how far you've made it because you've only focused on the moment in front of you. It's just like climbing Mount Everest, right? It's if you focused on the peak and that was the summit was your only thing that you're looking at, it can be daunting and overwhelming. But if you focus on just that next step, Allison Levine, a dear friend who has climbed Everest twice, she, when she talks about it, explains it as, that you don't just start at the bottom and walk to the top. That's not how it works. You start and you go to the base camp, and then you make it to the next base camp, and then you retreat back and you stay there and let your body acclimate. And then you go to the next base camp and then you stay there. And then you go to the next one and you retreat back. So there's these built-in retreats designed to be that way, to allow your body to acclimate so that you can actually get to that summit when you finally are there. And when she started to explain that to me, I started to look at these failures that we talked about earlier as built-in retreats. What if that failure is just bringing me back enough to reset, to acclimate to where I am so that I can now continue to try to move forward again? And that's how I started to approach these moments, knowing that some moments were going to move me forward, some moments were going to move me backward, but there's enough moments in every day that by the end of the day, I feel like I'm going to be further ahead than when I was when I started.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a body of work that when you zoom out, what you see is progress and momentum. If you look at a stock ticker, every second versus every minute versus every hour versus every day versus over a period of months or years, what you see is the momentum. What you see is the line going up and to the right. What you don't see is the volatility and the instability that, I mean, these days with our economy, it feels like every bloody day,
Yes.
But that's the point, right? When you can actually zoom out, or at least have the hope and the faith. Maybe the word faith is inextricably linked with hope. I once heard this beautiful statement that said, they say that the optimist says the glass is half full and the pessimist says the glass is half empty. That is not true. The optimist is someone that when the glass is completely empty and even cracked, believes that one day not only it will be full again, but overflowing. And I never forgot that definition, because to me that is optimism.
Yeah, I agree. And there's one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time is a guy named Foy Vance from Ireland. And he has a song called The Two Shades of Hope. And one of the lines in the song goes, if there's one thing that I know is that there's two shades of hope. One's the enlightening soul and the other's more like a hangman's rope. And I think it eloquently describes the two sides of hope. When hope is present, it's so powerful, it's palpable, right? It is that enlightening soul. But when your desires and expectations don't align, it's more like the hangman's rope, right? And that's that other side that we have to look at and understand, that uncertainty, for all of the stuff that it throws us into and makes us feel unsure and that sense of anxiety. What I try to get people to understand is, do you realize that hope cannot exist without uncertainty? It has to have uncertainty. Otherwise, there's no reason for hope. And so for all of the negative that uncertainty has, that it travels with, it also travels with hope. And if you choose to focus on that, you're going to find yourself in a much better position to not just be able to cope and deal with it, but to be able to move yourself forward in it in spite of the uncertainty.
Hope can't exist without uncertainty. Wow, I'm noodling on that. So they say hope is not a strategy, right?
Mm.
Hopium. So what is? How do you classify hope in general? If it's not a strategy, or maybe it is. I don't know what you think.
I would tell
What,
you 1000% it is a strategy. It is about managing desires and expectations against your actions.
so there you
And
go.
if,
You've debunked it. At
yes,
least
that's
I didn't. At least I didn't say hope wasn't a strategy. But people say that, right? They say,
they do.
that hope is not a strategy. But it made me think of Brent. The concept of the Stockdale paradox, right?
Mhm.
Realism and optimism. I heard the other, like everything is just like the connections in this conversation are like it's like I see dead people. It's going crazy. But there's this disappointment, right, is inextricably directly linked to expectations, and when your expectations are not realistic or too high, you're constantly going to be disappointed, and that disappointment is not necessarily even real. It's
Right.
just out of whack.
That's exactly right. And if you think about whether it's in your personal life, your professional life, you can put up with a lot of shit if you still have hope. Right? That's the defining thing as to how much resilience you're going to build is, do you still have hope that things can change? And if you do, then you're willing to put up with a lot. But the minute that you lose hope, you will not put up with a damn thing. The smallest thing becomes the biggest thing when hope is not there. And that's where we see people exiting, quitting, leaving their jobs, their marriages, their partnerships, their all that thing, is because the minute hope disappears, it is no longer worth the effort. And that is the big aha. So if you can keep that hope at a level that's present and palpable, then you build that resilience to deal with these things that life throws at us, even when we don't ask it to.
I'm smiling from ear to ear, like I was smiling on the inside. Now I'm smiling on the outside because I love it when two, even though I haven't actually delivered, I don't think I've delivered a keynote speech since COVID. That was just my forever changed. I just, I don't leave the house. Why do I need to leave the house when I get to talk to my friends like this? But, but when a bunch of keynote speakers get together, we're part of our own little brother and sisterhood, etc. So I love the fact that here we are, and we're talking about the last book, and we're talking about the next book in addition to the current book. It's almost like, yeah, we'll get to that another time, but like let's talk about the journey as well. And so I have to say, regarding hope, I think you haven't started writing the book yet. I mean, you shouldn't. I presume, like this book has just come out like this month. But I think you should call the book and be as direct as possible and say, hope is a strategy, right? Or hope as a strategy.
Yes.
That should be clear in the book, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
you take on everyone, you swim against the current, you cut against the grain, and you say, wait a second. And I think you're onto something, but I also see how the book cannot be written without momentum as well. And
Right.
so I'm just saying, Brant, like you got to go for the jugular here, because at the end of the day, it is the one thing that people are void of right now. They're walking along, they're confused, whether it's the economy, whether it's politics, whether it's whatever the case may be. It just feels right now that there's no clarity, there's no direction, there's no hope, and we need that. Brands need that, companies need that, employee engagement needs that, everybody needs it. So just don't don't be on the sidelines here.
Yeah.
Just go for it, man.
What's funny is you're saying that, I'm thinking back to some of the most powerful experiences I've ever had, and where they take place. whether that's in your place of business, whether it's at a place of worship. Um, the interesting thing is, I think back to it now. If I was to try to describe what was it about that experience that really spoke to me, I could make the argument that it's the presence of hope. And that is, if you've ever walked into a place of worship, wherever you know, whatever religion you are, they're not all created equal as much as you want them to be. And there's, I spent a good portion of my life when I first started in the music business, in the Christian music market, and playing, some of the biggest churches in the world, from Hillsong in Australia to, Rick Warren's church in California, to Joel Osteen's church in Houston, to you name it. I've been there. I've played these places. And while they all have the same goal, they most certainly do not have the same experience. And I have had some of the most powerful experiences based on the level of hope that's present. And I would tell you, probably one of the, if not the single greatest experience that I felt with hope was in a prison. As I was playing in a prison for the inmates. And these were all guys who, were lifers. And so they didn't have a lot to look forward to in that sense. But they had all found religion in prison. And the presence of hope in this small group of men who had done awful, awful things was strangely powerful, to be able to be there when they have nothing else but hope. Is a weird place to be. But as I look back now, no matter whether it was Theo's life being saved the first time miraculously by my brother filming this YouTube video, to the prison, to being at work, to signing my first deal with a speaker bureau, like all of these things that were powerful moments for me, they all could be described by the level of hope present in that moment. And I think that's something we can't deny.
I got another idea for you. Like I
Yeah.
want to be executive producer on this book. I want in. If you don't call it hope,
Yes.
is a strategy. What you can do as well is and whether this is different chapters or even one chapter, you can come up with almost the 10 myths, debunking the 10 myths about hope. Because the other one I was thinking is all these cliches. It's the hope that'll kill you, and you can almost come back and rework it, right?
Yes.
It's the hope that will thrill you. It's the hope,
Yes.
so you can almost rewrite these 10 lazy generalizations of hope, almost kind of like reclaiming hope in 2026, right? Reclaiming hope at a time when the world needs it more than ever. That's your subhead, right? Reclaiming hope, at a time when people need it, or something like that. I love it. It resonates, it connects, it is the right message at the right time. And I love the trilogy as well, which is recognizing the power of the moment, living in the moment, these moments, adding up these moments to create momentum. And before you know it, guess what, everyone? You look up and you're at the top. You're not Sisyphus, rolling that stone, through purgatory. Exactly. You've actually hit you. And by the way, it may not even be the top of the mountain. It just may be one of those beautiful retreats where you can retreat into yourself, take stock, but also just relax a little bit and savor the moment and savor your progress. We could do this all day.
I'm telling you, brother, I have always found that when I reach the peak of one mountain, I couldn't see the mountain that was behind it until I was on top of the one that I was on. And so it is always another peak, another thing to climb. I can't thank you enough for having me on, getting a chance to reconnect and discuss what's going on with both our lives. I am so thrilled for you to see your momentum that you've created, birthed out of probably the most uncertain time in our lifetimes that we'll face. And just genuinely thrilled for you, brother, to see you thriving now and finding your spot in the world to be able to create the impact that I know you long for. So thank you.
Someone smart once said, "Hope can't exist without uncertainty." So
that's the truth.
So there you go. He has a new book, Designing Momentum. He has a new newsletter, Better This Week, helping you get better each week at work, home, and life, and a new podcast called Just a Moment. And I assume people can download that wherever podcasts are streamed.
This is correct.
Spotify's, the Apples of the. It's amazing. It's wonderful to see you. I wouldn't even say the phrase is reinvented. I would say the word is reinvigorated. As I said, the right man with the right message at the right time. And all the while, Theo's legacy and his name in his second life, third life, fourth life, and so on and so forth will continue to gain momentum. It's been an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait for you to come back when the book is written. And by the way, you can come back before as well. Anytime you want to hang out.
Do it.
You know where to find me. I told you I don't.
I do know where to find you.
I don't leave the house. I just hang out here with my man Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back sometime in the future. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.